Dogmatism versus common sense. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 7, Jesus warns, "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruits, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them." Jesus here, as indeed many times during his teaching, counsels people to use their God-given common sense, and not to rely on high-flown but undemonstrable claims. Common sense goes beyond abstract reason, for it is rooted in actual experience. Even common sense, however, is deficient when the judgment called for goes beyond sensory experience. Ultimately, what he emphasized always, therefore, was intuitive perception. Thus, he expected more of his disciples than crude common sense, and often scolded them for being too literal-minded, as he did elsewhere, when they thought his statement, "I have meat to eat that you know not of," meant that he had the steaks or sandwiches secreted about his person. His reference, of course, was to spiritual, not to material substance. Words, even though appearing in the scriptures, are no substitute for direct perception of truth. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says in the 2nd chapter, "The sage who knows God has a little need for the scriptures as one might have for a pond when the whole land is covered in flood." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Again, happy Mahasamadhi, everyone. A master is known by his fruits. And today, the beginning of the day was very interesting. I had a trial. The fruit of a master are also his disciples. And this morning, I was scheduled to guide the long meditation for the celebration of Mahasamadhi, started from 6 to 9. And we had, Rudra and I, we had prepared it and organized it with our technician Krishna Prem, so that we could get other people involved through Zoom in other parts of the continent. And there were other countries, Serbia, and so the appointment was here at the Temple of Light at 5:45. And I remember still last night I was a little bit worried about Krishna Prem. Maybe it would be no time, would it be? And so I could experiment, how do you say, like a karmic boomerang that is connected to my thought, because last night I put the alarm clock and I was meant to go out at 20 to 5, so 6 to 20. So I put the alarm at 5 to 45 instead. Wrongly. So I went to bed earlier. For me, it's a little bit difficult. But this morning, by chance, I wake up at 5:42, and I wonder what happened. I just jumped out of bed, and I got my things ready, my blanket, my onboard, and I rushed to the car, and part the the window was frozen. So, so I had to go fast, but I could hardly see. I could only see half of the road, and so slowly, it defrosted. But exceptionally, the only advantage is that we don't have guests, therefore we have space right in front of the temple, and normally we cannot do that. And 2 minutes before 6, I come in, I can see Krishna, Prem, and Arudra, who were perfectly on time, and I said, I apologize. Krishna Prem was very busy, didn't even look at me, and Arudra was sitting very quietly in the loto position. So I said, because I didn't have time to go to the bathroom, and I asked permission to go, and they said yes. They said that you have 30 seconds. So I rushed to the bathroom, and I was still in time, and so I was able to experiment the fruit of the friends that are here, coming from my friends that are here at Ananda. So in a contest that is less, so the first reactions, if you're not prepared, are more difficult to contain. So it was nice that Arudra was already sitting in the lotus position. And so this is the way I was able to start the meditation this morning. And thank you for the presence of many of you, and maybe all of you who are listening now. It's been a very beautiful meditation this morning. Also thanks to Master's presence. Also thanks to the presence of all you Guru Bhais. Afterwards, we will talk again about Mahasamadhi, but now I would like to share with you some reflections about this subject of the scriptures. And Krishna says those who are already realized they don't need the scriptures, because somebody who is in an ocean or a lake doesn't need a glass of water. And they have potable water already. So the reason why in this era it's not so little enlightened, or relatively enlightened, we need the scriptures mostly because we perceive a separation between our daily life and our social interaction, our career, and those rare moments, or maybe just moments, daily moments where we meditate, where we try to feel a deeper contact within us, a reference point of inner peace through our own daily training, the self-control, our willpower, and our devotion. This reference point in the heart becomes easier and easier to find all the time, even when we are completely involved in the flow of activities or worries and responsibilities of our daily life. In the ancient times, higher times, there was no separation between daily life and time to go to the temple, to the church, or meditate. It was all one thing. Every action In the Satya Yuga, I'm referring all the actions that men had was expression of their inner communion with God. With us, many of us, we tend to have this separation, so we need inspiration, and the most direct inspiration comes from the scriptures, the words of the great masters. There is a story of Francis of Assisi, and this is a Franciscan land. So he was once walking, and he met a blind woman who asked him an offering, and because this woman was blind, and he couldn't see that she addressed the wrong person, because Francis himself wasn't carrying money with him. He didn't have money. Francis was sad about this, and he did wanted to give something to her, and the only thing that he had was his Bible. And it was such an important thing for him, but he thought, maybe if I give this Bible to this woman, she can sell it and maybe get some food for herself. So he did. But then he has a moment of difficulty, and he wondered, gosh, I gave her my copy of the Bible. And he so was looking at himself within, but intuitively he understood that he didn't need that book, the scriptures, anymore, because the strength behind those scriptures and his elevated consciousness and inspiration, he had already them within. He was already dedicating himself to experience and live the gospel daily, and all he needed that he was using to share with everyone, he had already within. One day he was with a brother in Bologna, I think, and how are we going to create this, our mission? He was wondering. And this is how they would often do. They would pray, and then they would open just the Bible and found a passage, and the sight of Jesus made his heart sweeter. And he wondered, how can I be strong? How can I access to this higher consciousness? And Jesus replies, sell everything you have, give the money to the poor, carry your cross and follow me. And the rich man said, maybe not now, maybe I'll do this later. So this was a simple step that was enough to Francis to just plan his whole mission and share this central inspiration with everyone. So non-attachment to earthly goods. So in those days, people needed to have access to a more free and unconditional freedom. I myself, I have a memory that I would like to share with you now, and while doing that I will relive it. I was sitting on an armchair, my father's armchair, and that's where he would at night sit and read this newspaper. I had taken from our shelves a Bible, an old one, and unfortunately I never found it again. And I was looking at it. I was young. I knew how to read, but I was really young. And I read this passage of Jesus where Jesus talks about it's a Sermon of the Mountain. And I could see the strength of the voice, the way Jesus addresses himself. So he's talking of the moment when people see the straw in other people's eyes and not the big trunk in their own. I am the vine, you are the farmer. I'm the farmer, you're the vine. So with my intellect not so completely developed, these words entered my heart directly, and I could feel the presence of a master. I could feel Jesus' strength and of his consciousness and his vibration behind his words. And this struck on me, because really I can say on my parents' side, I'm from the Netherlands, so we didn't really have any kind of religion as a practice. But this, in a certain way, allowed me to understand as a child that the relationship between a master and his disciples can never be something connected to fashion or just a tendency. So if you read a certain book that is famous, it's something more internal, something more. It's about inspiration. When God, this is a saying, God creates the soul, he knows already how it will be liberated, and another soul that will help to give freedom to this soul in a long process. So that comprehension, we can say that a guru and the relation between the guru and the disciple is not connected to just one incarnation, but it's an eternal relationship. I was able to, when I was a child, then there was adolescence, and of course that was a different time where I was into other things, and then later I was more into my mind and started to reflect more. I went back onto my research path, and when I was 21, I met an extraordinary person. He was an American person who gave me some books by Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda, and I started to read them. Back then, back then we can say that maybe this man could be defined a false prophet, because he was using his role as a professional, a turbet, to attract women to him, and he would try to control his patients. He would drink, and he had oscillations on his behavior. But he had given me these important books by Swami and Guru, and so I could feel that in these recordings that I could hear from Swami Kriyananda and the autobiography and the new path, I could see that how much I was nourished by those words, those readings. But as far as the friendship with the person that had given me those books, it maybe lasted just about 3 months, and then I decided to get away from that person. As I was at the age of 21, I was still looking, and I had challenges in different levels, like psychological and spiritual. So I really had to work hard on separating the truth from the false. And I could think maybe how come these teachings are coming to me from a person who is obviously not able to practice those teachings, and who is asking for devotion and from the disciples just for himself. So this is a false prophet attitude, because a true prophet is only in showing you the way, and then lets them go their own way. So it was for me a great blessing and a good karma, for which I'm very grateful. And because as I was very young, I had already this trial to learn how to make a distinction between true and false. And then I was able to continue this journey, this spiritual path. And then later on, I was actually able to know Swami Kriyananda himself in person. And I was, in my heart, I had a great devotion for him, my brother disciple, because Yogananda, I had already welcomed him as a guru, as my guru, and Swami Kriyananda as an older brother, disciple brother, and I had already had the intuition that he didn't want devotion for himself. He just wanted to devote his entire life to serve his own guru and to serve the guru for all of us. It signifies practicing his teachings in a creative way, in accepting that each one of us can practice in their own ways, and at the same time keeping the heart open for the inspiration that come to us from other disciples. Also learn from them. And this is what it means, serving the Guru. So that's what Swami Kriyananda would do. He would only do this. There was no ego that wanted something for himself. And I could see this from the first day that I met him. He was giving me so much respect, and literally he was almost showing humbleness towards me, and because of towards especially my musical talent. He was very encouraging towards me. And now something else that he would say that he would transmit to me. It was a great sense of calmness. I was very young, and I had so much within myself to develop, but I didn't feel bad about my immaturity, because you see, on this throat chakra, it corresponds to the calmness chakra, and I noticed that in his presence, this side of mine would calm down. I would acquire more calmness, and then in 1885, when we were first gathering in this ashram in Lake Como. And something else that our Guru Bhais can share with us is their process of growth. For instance, in this community, we don't live with perfect people, but we are with people who are in their own way. They're all trying to obtain a certain growth. Of course, it's not easy because there are so many things to learn the whole time. I myself thought to believe being very calm as a person, but then I saw that as I entered the outer world in certain social situation, I could notice that I wasn't calm at all, and I could see some fears and insecurities coming up. And so I realized that my growth was not in the solitary meditation, but with the interactions with others. And so these are the two things: serve together and meditate together. And in the process, learn to create a certain type of interaction, and of course a certain dharmic interaction that requires a lot of effort, introspection, honesty towards oneself, knowing how to control one's own reactive process and overcome the negative emotions like jealousy, insecurities, and emotional reactions or other. This is a journey. The good news is that the growth itself is joy. So to see, if I compare myself as I am now to what I was 4 years ago, I can perceive that there was some growth with me, and I can see this also with my friends. Also with Swami Kriyananda gave us a great example of growing, of a spiritual growing. It is important for us to be still in the consciousness of mortal consciousness, and understand that also the great masters had to grow before reaching their position where they are now. And Swami tells us a story about this karma of his past lives. For instance, he told us that in this life he had a conflict, very severe, with the Gurubai, a woman in Mount Washington. And it was a conflict of opinions, and so the ideal of how to serve master. This woman was insisting with this idea of maintaining the purity of the teachings, and only a small group of monks we will be the ones to share these pure teachings, and all the others, nobody else will be able to share them. And so people sometimes need to share these teachings, maybe even making some mistakes while doing that. So in this way, people can really learn from their own experiences and use their good common sense that is referred to in the reading today. So later, this conflict culminated with the expulsion of Swami Kriyananda from the organization where he had always served, with the convention that with the organization that the master himself had founded, and Swami started the Ananda organization, and that was followed by the persecution with by these people intending to destroy him. This is a strange story, but Swami himself tells us about this in the book, a place called Ananda. And there was a man who came from New York, and so this man from New York talks about a vision of himself, of Swami and this woman, and this vision was in a life long time ago, and you two were brothers, and she was your sister. And you were very magnetic, very strong, and you were attracting followers. And at some point you left the ashram of the master and started to become yourself a guru. And she, in that life, was really very, very upset about him. And so this feeling of towards him had remained even in this incarnation. But in the meantime, Swami had grown, and so when Swami reopened the door and took again on the discipleship, and maybe remain with him a karmic consequence from this previous life, a tendency towards doubt, because maybe for many times he had many doubts. He was devoured by doubts, and doubt is very difficult. That's why it's so important to have devotion, because instead of trying to comprehend, to understand the truth with just the use of the mind, it's difficult. It's important to open the heart and offer our love from our hearts and offer it to the center, Christ center, in a way that the doubts can be resolved this way, and acquire a great sense this way of happiness. So Yogananda, in this life of Swami, helped him in two ways. First of all, when he was 22, and told him, get devotion, you must develop devotion, you're too intellectual. And Swami Kriyananda, he was very open, so he was becoming happier and happier, and more magnetic, and he could feel that this was his way, the way, not the intellect. And also he started instead to use the intellect in order to share the teachings with the others, writing books or music. So Yogananda was helping him in two different ways to overcome this karma. So one was more the development of devotion, and the other one was to support him to reach with reaching many people around the world with the joy that he had within, and thanks to the attunement that he was able to have with a higher consciousness. And when he overcame the doubt, and definitely, and in this life, he was able to leave his body in a glorious way. I wanted to still say a few things, but Yogananda himself today is this Mahasamadhi's day. The true Guru can be recognized in certain ways. First is the spiritual level of his closer disciples that are not necessarily all appearing at the same period. So here in the word of Ananda, I know some of the disciples of Yogananda that I consider them as a great example of purity and depth and maturity, and maybe even sanctity. And then you can recognize a great master in the happiness of many other disciples that maybe are still going to school, but it's a happy school because the teachings are joyful. And Yogananda, he would never attract the attention towards himself, but towards the teachings. He would say, do not believe what I'm telling you, but just try it yourself and see if it works. The energization exercises, the Hongso, Kriya Yoga, and the affirmations, all of these instruments, he would teach them, he would share them with everyone, and then would just say, see if they work with you. So many disciples of Yogananda can be recognized because they have something special with them. And in a way that a master, when the master comes, he lifts up the entire community. It's a light that comes with him that nourishes the humanity. 2 years ago, we went to Los Angeles and we went to the Biltmore Hotel where he had his Mahasamadhi, the living of his body with awareness. So there were people, the staff from the hotel, very kind. They showed us the hall where this banquet in 1952 took place. That today is the hotel's hall, the entrance. So this man showed us the place where he sat during that banquet, where the place where we can see appearing in the picture of the last smile with these symbols in the back, with some dolphins and flowers. And I stood right there in that very place, and I felt this aspect of the last moment of his life. For me, he's my guru. I feel him present in my life. But what I felt there is that was a life that he lived for the entire humanity, and not because he's more clever of all the masters, but because he was able to share in the world the possibility to put together science and spirituality, science and the technology and the work with the energy and nuclear sciences and the medical science and the journey, an inner journey that empowers those who practice it and allow them to experiment what works and what works for them and what does not work for them. But these are things that are connected to the reality of science, but also experimented personally. We cannot think to live a life where we do the things that we do only because somebody is telling us to do it. To remain in our comfort zone and continue and keep on doing our job and just staying there and remain with our securities. This is a life with a low energy, and these great masters and also other masters tell us to experiment yoga and meditation and the subtle energies, and see how this can transform your lives. And on the entire world, some Swami has shared with everyone, but more and more people will still continue to know him and will get inspired by him. Like now, there are many people inspired by Yogananda worldwide, because he would get in contact with many scientists as well. He was well known. So his role and was so important, and we are now sharing this, and we are part of this project, and we try to use our perception in order to experiment and see what works and share it with everyone. And I would like to end with a short poem by Yogananda. Save me from wrong beliefs. It's about, if it says that if you're the first one to say that you really, truly, deeply desire the truth in your life and in your heart and in your relationship with others, the guru will come, the help will come. But first, you must really show your big thirst of this need. And he says, I am lost, Father, in the wastelands of wrong beliefs. Where is my home? I have kept the doors of my soul always open, expecting thee. I have not yet found thee. Rise high in the sky to illuminate my darkness. Be the pole star to my searching mind, directing me to thyself. For therein I know lies my home. If we develop this skill of maintaining our point of reference, the universe will give all the need of the help that we need. Thank you, and happy Mahasamadhi Day.